Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Chesed Sabbath Fellowship at 1631 Ford Parkway. We meet every Sabbath in St. Paul, Minnesota from 11:30 a.m. to sunset. Here's another video. This one's intriguing. The plagues. Are they cyclical or biblical? Are they man-made? Are they coming from God? Is there something biblical that we can point to, or is this just a bad phase of human life? Are we experiencing the genesis of the fourth seal? And I've always asked that. So let's go through it today. I try not to twist the Bible. I can't find verses that specifically say in the end times these things will specifically happen, but yet, generally speaking, they should happen. I try not to twist prophecy. And then the news, I have to go outside of the United States for my news now because it's so bad in America. So let's first start out with the first plague that we notice in the Bible, other than, say, the flood, if that was considered a plague, or the plague of kicking people out of Nimrod's ziggurat in Babylon. Well, anyway, the point is Moses and Aaron went in unto Pharaoh and said to him, Thus saith the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Else, if thou refuse to let my peoples go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into thy border, and they shall cover the face of the earth, and that one shall not be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of that which is escaped, which remaineth unto you from the hail, and shall eat every tree which groweth for you out of the field. So am I equating China with Egypt? I don't know. Egypt was always known as the bank. If you talk to a good not eschatologist, but theologian, you would go invade Egypt first and get your money and then go fight some more wars because Egypt always had the cash. They had good crops. They had things. They had gold, silver, they had money. So you'd go to the bank. China is the wealthiest nation in the world today. They have, their population is 1.4 billion, say. Well, that's huge. Their middle class is bigger than the United States whole population. So they are very, very impressive. But are they the Egypt of modern days? And can I really say the Bible is saying, oh, now suddenly Egypt in the Bible is China going forward? No, I don't think I can. But I can say that things are happening in the world. So let's go analyze that. 360 billion locusts, this is from Steve Quayle on the right-hand side, have eaten their way through Eastern Africa and are heading towards Western Africa, also to Saudi Arabia, and across the whole Middle East. They're going to head across Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. There are billions of people over there, and they're heading towards the billions of people. They'll probably move their way through India, onto Thailand, Vietnam. 600 billion are up from 360 billion 30 hours ago, so they're multiplying very, very fast. Weather in Europe is thrashing the growing season, just like the United States. So we will have less of a harvest, and then the locusts will eat more. So is this a plague from God? Is this like Moses and Aaron, or is this cyclical? Is the Wuhan plague, the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus, is that a plague from God, or is that just stupidity? I'm going to present a case again where I believe that it's man-made, but even if that's the case, is it because God allowed this to occur? I don't know. So, as always, I want to state in terms of the Bible some of the words so that you know what's going on. I'm stating in some texts of Matthew 24, you will see both limos and loimos, which would be famines and pestilences, and that would be the same in Matthew, Mark, Luke, okay, the synoptic gospels. And so you can see both of them are listed in there in this particular application. And limos would be destitution, scarcity of food. Loimos would be a plague. It could be thanatos too, which is another Greek word for just death, okay? Disease, death, possibly a pest. Those are the two words, so 3042, 3061, and they pop up all the way through. And then when we move on to, here's Matthew 24, and it shows in this particular Greek text, it's missing the loimos, but it does have the limos, and we know it's there. So, they will mislead you. You will begin to hear of wars, rumors of wars. Behold, don't be alarmed. It's necessary for this to take place, but it's not the end. The telos, which could be a new beginning, will rise up nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes and pestilences in various places because the other word, loimos, is in there too. And these are just the beginnings of the birth pangs, which I argue are the seals. And here's Revelation 6:8. And when he opened the seal of the fourth, and I heard the voice of the living creature saying, "Come." And I looked, to behold a pale horse, a chloros, a green horse. And the one sitting on him, another spirit, so to speak, was Thanatos, a death Thanatos. So, I mean, rather a death spirit. And Hades was following after him. That's hell, we'll call it. And he was given authority over a fourth of the earth, that's 1.8 billion people, to kill with the sword. It's a ramphea, it's a long sword, and with famine and with plague. So there's Limo and Limos and Thanatos. In this case, it doesn't. So you'll see plague kind of move back and forth between Loimos and Thanatos. And then with the beast, the Therion, that can be biological warfare. That's a lower form of animal life. So just keep that in mind. That's Revelation 6:8. Very similar to Matthew, isn't it? Very similar. Limos, Loimos, plague, death. It's there if you will agree with me. Now, before a lot of these plagues hit, I have to remind you of this. So before we dig into these things, remember that Zero Hedge was just banned by Twitter, and and other people are too. So basically, if you're blowing the whistle and disagreeing with the current governments, they'll just ban you. They'll shadow ban you. They'll do other things like that. So the First Amendment is going to go at some point in time. Get used to it. To take the mark of the beast, they'll have to ban alternative networks. And I'm one of them, you know. I mean, Beth Hesed is one of those alternative networks. And I'm a contrarian. I always have been that way. Ben Davidson is mentioning, here's what he mentioned that was so cool, and then they started to ban him. He said, on January 6th, we had the conjunction of the Sun, Mercury, Jupiter. Then on January 10th through the 14th, we had the full moon, Earth, Sun, Mercury, Ceres, and Saturn conjoining, and then also the new moon, Venus, Sun, Mars during the 24th through the 27th. Well, he said, let's look at it. So the first time we had a 6.4 in Puerto Rico. Then number two, we had January 12th, we had the volcano, the Taal volcano. And then number three is Jamaica, the big 7.7. So they seem to hit on these conjunctions. So if he's predicting earthquakes, we need to ban him, just like they banned this guy. They banned him in China so much that he's dead now. This wonderful, wonderful doctor. You know, all he did was take care of people. And look at him now. He's dead. And they're building places, morgues, so to speak, for the dead bodies. And so anger simmers over this guy because he told the truth that this is a manufactured disease and that China is underreporting it. We know that they are. So he's dead now, and that's too bad. Please remember him. So here's who our enemy is right now. This lady is from Miami, Florida. She's a federal representative, and she's saying, we want YouTube and Google and other Twitter and people like that to ban the Constitution or our constitutional rights, the First Amendment, which would give us the right to be able to complain and cite contrary opinions. So no dissent for you, obviously. If you don't believe in global warming, you will be shadow banned and you will be ceased. That's what's going to happen. So they call it climate misinformation, and they're going to fight this misinformation. And we are skeptics, and they don't like us being skeptics. And they want to attempt to shut down debate on climate policy by silencing dissenting voices. So it's just interesting how this is happening. And this is an article about Kathy Castor, and I can't remember who it is, but she is a Democrat. There you go. So let's see, Junk Science, that's who stated this. Junk Science is saying the totalitarian instincts of the climate movement. Whether it's communist China or our American government, they're trying to ban contrary opinions like these. Now, why? Why should you ban this? Because this is a real plague. This woman has been developing plants with CRISPR. Well, guess what? Animals and plants are somewhat similar in terms of they have cells, and you can modify the RNA and DNA in cells. So we were blaming the Wuhan virus, the novel virus, on bats and rats and snakes because that was the government lying to us. So then the contrarians like me are coming out and saying, no, this is CRISPR edited. And because the shapes don't make sense. You know, if you're looking at a tree and half of it's been shaved off exactly, well, you know that a human being took a chainsaw to that. So we're seeing all sorts of numbers out there in terms of the death totals. We're seeing that China is designating which populations get to live and which ones get to die. So they're going to allow these 11 cities, Beijing, Tianjin, and Shanghai, and others, to survive, and then the rest of them, they can die. That's just life and death when you're a communist nation, or America at times. If they don't allow dissent, it's the same as China, people. Keep that in mind. So you can claim that this is a man-made virus, and that's the tack that I'm taking, because the Chinese government was allowing their scientists to go to Canada, steal evidence, take it back on a plane. So dangerous viruses are just, what are you holding there, ma'am or mister? Oh, just a horrible virus. Yeah, I'm taking it back to China. So thank you, when you're on a plane. Um, it's amazing. And so we've caught them time and time again. Canada kicked these people out, these CRISPR people. And so now this is what we have. So basically, we have 31,527 sick today from the Wuhan disease, and it could be 2 million cases by Valentine's Day. I believe it's underreported. I remember when it was only 9,000. That was nothing. Now we're way up to 31,000, but it could be 310,000. I argue that. So if you want to, you can hit this South China something post. I can't remember what it is. Morning Post. They have this article every day on what the numbers are, and I just go to it every day and click on it and see what's going on. So we could be very close to 2 million cases by Valentine's Day. Keep that in mind. So the biblical plagues are getting worse. This is from our friends over at Zero Hedge. And so, according to Tencent, keep in mind, when I started putting these videos out, I had a friend create a bumper for our videos, and we aren't using it anymore because Tencent sued us for copyright infringement. And it's like they go out and they don't make much, but they take everything and call it their copyright, and then they fight it so that no one can use their own stuff, and they just fight you on YouTube. So if you create something, they block it. If it has any reference to what they have done when they illegally just grab stuff. So, but Tencent in this case is doing something good. They're actually leaking out that the cases seem to be 10 times higher. And you see the graphic in the upper right-hand side for that particular day. That was 2/1 of 2020. They're saying 154,000 cases, much higher. We're starting to see cases break out in other places, including Saudi Arabia has a pathogenic bird flu virus popping out there. We've already seen the pigs. Now we're seeing the bats. Bats in Australia, they're hungry. All of their prey is dead from all the fires, so they're swarming. So they call it a biblical plague. They call it a bat tornado for the poor Australians. And this is from the Mirror down. This is a British publication about Australia. But these are huge bats, and they're hungry, and they're flying everywhere. And you can't fly a plane through them. You would have serious problems. You can't fly a plane through locusts. Keep that in mind. The plagues are everywhere, but are they biblical or are they just cyclical? So other plagues, damaging winds and massive waves are raging in the North Atlantic. Okay, interesting. 200 miles per hour jet stream. Okay. Plague of locusts, starting out in Africa, and now it's in Pakistan. It's heading across, and then here it shows Southwest Asia, but it's going to hit Southeastern Asia too. And it started in Africa. So obviously the plagues are everywhere. Are they biblical? Are they getting worse? So this talks about the large African issues with the locusts. And it's funny. I was talking to a couple of rabbis last night, and they were mentioning that they actually know which locusts are clean now. I had heard before they didn't know, but obviously they have some people that have lived in Israel all these years, and they know the difference. So they're biblically clean in some cases. So, I mean, at least with the Africans, if they're hungry, if the locusts ate all of their food, they get some food from the locusts. So acute hunger should happen in Africa. 1.2 billion people live in Africa. I had no idea. I thought it was 600 million. And it's going to get worse, people. So they're predicting plagues of locusts could get 500 times larger when warmer weather arrives. That's horrific. Now, here's another one that's really weird. There are giant flocks of crows and huge mosquitoes invading the skies around China. They smell the death. They smell the death and they're coming for the food. This is somewhat like Revelation 19, Ezekiel 38, the Gog-Magog war, where God says, hey, carry on. Would you like to have a great feast? Feasting on the kings of the earth, and then he goes out and wipes them out because they're coming against Israel. So it's just interesting. Um, uh, these hmm, these crows seem to anticipate the death. They can smell it. They can smell the odor of a dying person. The Chinese culture, crows are considered inauspicious and are always linked with death. Ancient Chinese wisdom tells us that when there is a large number of overwintering mosquitoes, when they emerge in the early spring, they will likely bring about an outbreak of a contagious disease. Interesting. This is from Strange Sounds. Moving forward, is it biblical? Well, the UN called it the Four Horsemen. Now, they're not the Four Horsemen. This is the UN. They're not biblical. But it's interesting that they're citing global tensions mounting, our planet is burning, a call for fair globalization, and taming the wild beasts of cyberspace. It's just interesting. It's these four horsemen can jeopardize every aspect of our shared future. Well, fine, that's our friends over at the United Nations, but it is interesting that the pagans, we'll call them, are citing the four horsemen of the apocalypse like I am. The four buses of the apocalypse. This is weird. So basically, these Wuhan people left China, went to Europe, got on these horseman courses, or coaches rather, four of them, and took a 180-mile journey. And you can see the picture. The guy that's driving the bus, he isn't wearing any protection whatsoever. And these might be sick people in there. And you could be the man who's driving a bus full of potential coronavirus carriers to a quarantine while being observed by a man in a hazmat suit. I mean, this is amazing. So the poor Britons, they're wondering what's happening here. So this is the four buses of the apocalypse. This is a friend of mine, Michael Snyder, and he writes a bunch of different blogs. But he's saying 2/3 of China's swine herd have been lost to the disease of swine flu, and pork prices are at an all-time high, just under $300 per hundredweight, as the country outbids these countries outbid Japan for pork. I mean, in Asia, pork is a delicacy, and when all the other animals are dying, you have to eat something for protein. So if it's not going to be pigs or dogs or cats or bats or rats or whatever else, what are they going to do for protein? And if the locusts come in and eat all the food, people are going to starve. So these are four plagues marching across Asia simultaneously: the coronavirus, the African swine fever, H5N1 bird flu, and H1N1 swine flu. That's four. Okay, it isn't the four horsemen, but it's like four, so keep that in mind. And this is Steve Quayle. He's an interesting one. I mean, I claim he has a stream of consciousness. Some people love him. I read his stuff every day. It's just I can't handle listening to him because he repeats himself and he goes on for on and on and on because he's had some head injuries over the years. He means well. I know he loves God, but he does wear me out. So he's saying the four horsemen of the apocalypse are beginning their gallop across the land. Consider, if you will, all the global, cosmic, and earth changes taking place right now. He's claiming normal is done, and so he wants you to buy gold and silver. That's fine. Maybe that would be a good idea for you. Maybe. But he's citing four horsemen again, and he works closely with Tom Horn, who is a brilliant man, a PhD, and knows his end times. Good guys. Here's another person that agrees with me in terms of the four horsemen, or that we're in the fourth seal. So Dana, Ashlie, she's a YouTuber, but she's a smart person. I'm impressed. Some of them are just carnival barkers. She's not. She's reflective. So many believers, all that nothing could happen to us. It's only in the movies. They will be raptured out before anything bad happens to them. But Jesus warned and prepared us not for wrath, but for tribulation. In Matthew, he synopsizes the first four seals that it seems that the impact of the seals are at the hands of these evil men. So she's arguing man-made diseases, and this is a big deal. But is it biblical? Is it coming out from God? Or is it coming from man? Or is it a combination of each? So here's another one. So this is Behold the Pale Horse. And this is bigwobble.org. Behold the Pale Horse from January of 2020. And they're saying that this seems like the fourth seal. And it does. Now, is it? I can't prove that yet, but there are so many signs going on. So once again, the fourth seal is the Rumphia supernatural sword, the famine Limos, death Thanatos, and Therion, which is like microbiology, biowarfare. And so all of these things are going on at the same time. And this is January, people. So another source, this is Breaking Israel News. Uh, this man, this rabbi, is linking it up. A Kabbalah expert is saying that China will suffer the worst of the diseases. Rabbi Ben Artzi said more than 100,000 people will die. It might be more than that, probably to even greater problems. So now that's what Dana was saying too. That if this isn't the one, there's another one coming. They're all going to get worse and worse and worse. So just be aware of that. He's saying there's going to be more problems coming along. He's predicting that it's coming against China. So China has done some bad things, and it's coming back. Their chickens are coming home to roost, so to speak. So China is like a pharaoh in terms of imposing things, and they've been throwing babies in the Nile for years. China has been aborting so many, billions of babies, basically, that now we're dealing with. God might have imposed things back on them. So this is interesting to cite this. So China, like Egypt, the link between the two. The rabbis are seeing it. I'm seeing it. I can't say that's how the Bible should be interpreted, but it seems reasonable. So seal 4 then expect 1.8 billion deaths in 2020 or 2021. So this U.S. scientist said this coronavirus could kill 65 million people in 3 months before the outbreak of Wuhan, China. So they were doing studies beforehand and saying, it seems like a coronavirus of the right style could kill 65 million. That's a lot of people. So the CDC is analyzing these things. They've been analyzing it. They've quarantined 50 million people, and we'll see what happens. But I think if this isn't the one, it'll be another one later on. I also wanted to state this from Exodus 12. And so remember, I'm writing right to left. So, for I will pass through the land of Egypt on the night, and will strike all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from man and to beast, and all the gods. So he's coming against the gods. And China has been killing their babies. So for them to lose via the plague their firstborn would it would be almost poetic justice based on the amount of abortions that they've done. So he's going to execute judgment against the gods of Egypt. Is he executing against the gods of China right now? So God has taken his place in the divine council in the midst of the gods. He holds judgment. This is Psalm 82. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, your gods, sons of the Most High, all of you, nevertheless, like men you shall die and fall like any prince. So Jesus quoted that too as he was walking around with the people. So God is saying he holds judgment in the midst of the gods, and he's coming against the gods of Egypt. Is he coming against the gods of China? When we go forward and we start to analyze what's going to happen going forward, remember, I'm not a prophet. I don't receive messages like that. I seem to be involved in prophecy, but I'm not a prophet. So don't expect me to say, oh, well, something's going to happen next week. I'm just telling you that it's intriguing around the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, that there seems to be a lot of things going on during this full moon. In 2 years past, so in 2018, 2019, we had full moons, blood red moons, on Tu B'Shavat, which is the day to plant trees. And that happened in 18 and 19. Now 20, there's nothing going on. But this is that anniversary coming up here on the 15th day of the lunar month, which should be about, I think the 10th should be this time around for the full moon. And we'll just see what happens. So just be aware. So here it is. So I just wanted to point out the full moon phases, and I think I moved it around just a little bit. But yeah, February 9th should be the day. I'm sorry, I listed it as March 9th. But it shows all the full moon phases here. It shows all the Rosh Kodeshes. Just be aware of those. I think each month is going to be intriguing this year. Just see what happens on the Rosh Kodesh, the new moon of each month, and the full moons for that matter. Just be aware of it. And then, as I stated below, you can see in the green in the middle down below there, Tu B'Shavat is the day to plant trees. And we had those interesting blood moon eclipses occurring in 2018, 2019 on Tu B'Shavat, which is that 15th day of Shavat, that month, January time frame. Um, we'll see what happens. Um, Once again, one more time, I just want to state that I think it's intriguing that the rat was the first of the zodiac signs, the first of the gods of Egypt, and God came against it with, if he did, and I'm not putting words in God's mouth, but if he did come against the rat, the first of the gods, then this is just interesting with the coronavirus. Just interesting how these things all worked out, and many plagues are going on in January here. So just be aware that there is something, something connected somehow, and I don't know how to state it yet. Um, and I just want to state that all of the 10 plagues went against the 10 gods of Egypt. So God had to, our God had to destroy all of the gods of Egypt, including Pharaoh in some ways. Um, and then in Rome, just keep in mind, in all of these pagan cultures, we had 12 gods and 12 months, and we had people worshiping all of these gods, and God came against all of these. So these gods were there. They seem to exist from the Adam time to Noah. So keep that in mind. So as we move forward here, a couple more news articles that I want you to see that God is punishing China measure for measure. So I talked to a rabbi about this last night. I found it to be highly interesting. So they were citing the sotah, which I wouldn't have naturally thought of. So the sotah is from Numbers 5, 10 to 31. And it's about a wife that goes out and has an affair on her husband, and he becomes jealous. So he brings her into the priest. The priest unwraps her hair and exposes it, and then has her drink some water with dirt from the floor of the temple or the tabernacle. And then if she drinks it and everything's okay, then the husband's in big trouble. If she drinks it and her stomach distends and her thigh sloughs away from her body, she's guilty. And that's what happened to my former wife. So just keep that in mind. And it happened in 2007 and 2017, 10 years apart. So she had an affair on me, and she never admitted to it. And it's just interesting that it happened exactly the way the Bible stated it. She had her hamstring slough away from her rear end in 2007, and she had, I don't know how many inches of her lower intestine removed due to diverticulitis in 2017. It's just interesting, and it was interesting too that I had dreams about that in 2017 during Sukkot, during the time that she went into the hospital. So I was basically told that this would occur. I didn't need to hear it from anybody else. Just be aware of this, that God punishes measure for measure. So if you are sleeping around, he's going to punish you measure for measure, like the sotah. And it's rather Jewish, but it is also rather biblical. There's a measure for measure punishment occurring in the world today. And I think this rabbi nails it here. So I want to go through the seals one more time, just because I don't spend enough time on this. And so seal 1 is it's already occurred, and it would be west. Seal 2 is east. These are based on Zechariah 6 directions. North is seal 3. And then I'm stating, based on dates, that seal 3 should have occurred in 2012. And the intriguing thing is that Pope Benedict announced that he would retire in the spring of 2012, during the time that it was prophesied by Chris Horn, or Chris Putnam and Tom Horn, in their book Petrus Romanus. And then when they set up Pope Francis to be the Pope and announced it on February 11th of 2013, they had 2 lightning strikes on the Vatican. So I want to mention this because it's so intriguing that you've got these weird mass meditation days coming up, and you've had them in the past in 2012. The Age of Aquarius. Just interesting that during the time that they thought their Age of Aquarius would hit, that's when all these plagues are hitting. Just be aware of it. We started seeing more plagues in 2012, but we're seeing more in 2020 here. So just be aware that as the pagans start to um, what would I say? Abracadabra. I say it, I speak as I say, or it will happen as I say. It's Hebrew. No, I can't remember. I can't say it in the Hebrew. I'm sorry now. But anyway, it is a way of conjuring based on the Semitic languages, and people have been doing it for many thousands of years. And the Pope is part of it. I believe. I believe he's the false prophet. And many Catholics do too. Seal 4 is yet to come, but it's starting to sound like these are the plagues. These are the signs of the fourth seal. Seal 5, we've seen some signs of it, but not enough yet. Seal 6, you'll know it when it hits. So once again, I believe that I only have a time date stamp on the third seal, but 1967, Western civilizations just started falling apart after that. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll over the next 50 years after Moshe Dayan hands back the Temple Mount. The second seal, I believe the Bushes conspired against Iraq and other Middle Eastern countries to start horrible wars that won't end. And that started 9/11. They forced 9/11, and they kicked the hornet's nest. Then the third seal was prophesied during the summer of 2012, and the prophecy worked exactly. We're waiting for the fourth seal, but the plagues, the war, famine, plagues, and Therion seems to be happening now, guys. The fifth seal is yet to occur in fullness. The sixth seal is yet to occur too. And that is the end of the video. So I'd like to thank you for your time. Keep on praying, keep on worshiping, keep on believing. Yeshua is going to return at some point in time. It's going to be horrific. And if we're going into the fourth seal, you'll know it. I'm not prophesying that it's going to occur this year, but if you see 1.8 billion people die, you're going to know that it's the fourth seal. And if it happens through four things, you know that it's biblical. Take care. God bless. Bye bye.